Shooting the Shiznit is exclusively sponsored this month by Cloud9 LLC Vapor Company. Cloud9 LLC Vapor Company is your go-to vape shop in Oxford, Mississippi. Located on the West Oxford Loop near Continental Hair Salon. That's right, you can reach them on Facebook at /Cloud9 Vapor Supplies. That's /Cloud9 Vapor Supplies. Or over there on Twitter at Cloud9 Vapor Ox. OX. That's Cloud9 Vapor Ox. OX. Or you can call them at 662-832-6297. Over 300 flavors of juice, and if you need a starter kit, they're the place to go in Oxford, Mississippi. Come in and test all the flavors and tell them that Shooting the Shiznit sent you. Have you listened to last week's episode, the week before, or all the episodes? By the way, all of them are at www.stspod.club and all of the fine podcast players. Now on with the show.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Let's start the party.
Wrapped up in my hands, your glass jaw don't stand a chance. You use your words like bullets, I use my fists like bullets. I'm done with cheap shots and you fakes. I'm gonna be your last mistake. Use your words like bullets, gonna use my fists like bullets.
Hey, we're gonna welcome Jastin Taylor. That's right, Jastin Taylor. I'm gonna bring him from the green room. He's over there. He especially asked for some Dr. Pepper. How's it going, Jastin?
Oh, I'm doing great, and I'll be doing better once I get my Dr. Pepper.
hey, we'll be, we said all kinds of stuff to our guests. You know, you'll get a 6-pack of Dr. Pepper, some Slim Jims, a little bit of everything there for being a guest here on Shooting the Shiznit. And, hey, Jastin, here's what I do is I see someone on the internet I find interesting that I've never talked to before, or I bring an old friend that I've known forever, and we just spend 30 minutes talking about wrestling or, you know, just talking about anything. And you are somebody that one of my friends shared something that happened to you recently where you were on Future of Honor, which we'll get to. And I seen it, and I was interested in you. I watched some matches of yours and said, hey, man, he's a good, solid worker. I want to bring him on and talk about how you become a fan and everything. So we'll start out with that, and then probably after the commercial break, I'll ask you specific questions about some of the guys you worked. When did you, let's start there. When did we become a fan? What made you become a fan of professional wrestling?
Wow. Well, man, you got to go all the way back to the almost the beginning when I was a little kid, man, probably 4 or 5 years old. And the thing that stood out about wrestling to me when I first started watching it as a kid is that these guys, they all seemed like real life superheroes. The bright, vibrant colors, you know, you had Macho Man shouting and yelling, oh yeah, and all that stuff, and Hulk Hogan with the big bright red and yellow talking crazy, and the Ultimate Warrior jumping around in the ring and shaking the ropes and everything. And they were just these big muscled up guys, and it seemed like anytime there was some evil or there was a bad guy doing something, these guys would rise to the test, and it was always exciting to see them in the ring. And that's what it felt like to me. I've always been a fan of superheroes, and growing up, Superman was my boy. You know, now a little bit older, I like different ones now, but Superman was the guy. And that's what these wrestlers were reminded me of. They reminded me of like real life Superman. So I think as far as I can remember, that was really the first thing that drew me to wrestling, is that, wow, superheroes actually exist. Those were my thoughts when I was a kid.
Now, how young was you when you first? Do you remember when you first turned it on, or what made you start watching it? That's one of those things that we like to dive into.
Man, I want to say it was my dad. I want to say it was him. He was randomly flipping the channels. I think it was just one of those situations where I was sitting down at the TV with my dad, and he's flipping through the channels, and all of a sudden he stops on wrestling. And I want to say Undertaker and Hulk Hogan were having a confrontation of some sort. They were just not wrestling, but they were talking to each other. And he was like, oh, here's some wrestling. And he was like, well, let's watch a little bit of this. And it was just the most random thing. And my eyes were just glued to the television. And he was like, okay, I'm going to turn the channel. And I was like, no, why don't you just, no, don't, please, Dad, just leave it here. And I think that was really the first time I ever saw wrestling. I live in a small town, man, in Midland, Odessa. So for the longest time, wrestling didn't come over here. I didn't, it wasn't like the Indies how it is now. So there weren't a lot of live shows or anything like that. So any wrestling I got was on the television. And really, it was just a random decision by my dad that really led to all of this.
We all have that story. I'm a little bit older than you, so mine was, I was with the so many territories that were going on at the time, but it was my neighbor across the street. She wanted to take her sons to go to wrestling and asked me and my mom to go with them. And I've been a fan. I didn't even watch it on television until after seeing it live. But we all have that. Now, how did you progress as a fan? Did you start going to the matches when they got there? Did you start buying the wrestling magazines, videotapes? How did all that happen?
Well, probably a combination of all of that. Early on, of course, I was just trying to catch it on TV whenever I could. And I was one of those. It wasn't like I instantly was a dedicated fan. I wish I could say that. But wrestling was kind of an on and off thing. Like when it was on, if I would catch it, I would definitely watch it. But it was never like one of those things where I was like, oh, man, I just had to tune in and see wrestling. Not until I got a little bit older. But at first, it was just kind of a nice little pastime, just something my dad and I did. But when I started to get a little older, and I want to say I was in junior high school, I met some friends, and I think that's where the love of wrestling really started budding for me. They were huge fans, and I had a friend that he would buy the magazines, and he would collect them in the PWI top 500s and stuff like that. I started reading those magazines with him, and it just sparked my interest even more. And, it was almost like he just took that small interest I had and it just blew up. And before I knew it, I was watching it every week up until I was about high school. And, when I was growing up in high school, that was when the Attitude Era and the NWO era was at the height of its power. So when I was growing up in high school, wrestling was a cool thing. Everybody was watching it then.
Because everyone was watching it then. It was just crazy at the time. And your story is very similar to people your age. But with that, you also have people like me that quit watching wrestling altogether that came back during the Attitude Era and stayed. I've been. And then left again. It seems like fans go and stay. I do a co-host a show with a guy by the name of Lance Levine. He has been a fan without actually quit watching wrestling for over 30 years, and I see that a lot. I see people, they just stop or they get real life happens is what happens.
Oh yeah, and also wrestling. The demographic that it targets is also cyclical, if you ask me. Because at that time, when it was the Attitude Era and stuff like that, and then ECW was in the mix and all of that kind of stuff was going on, it seemed like it was more for your adults. It was more for like your young adults. You know, we're hot-blooded. We're full of testosterone. We're angry at the world. That's when all that, you know, some of that, you know, punk rock music was at the height at that time, and everybody was listening to like angry rap and rock music. And I just remember that's what it felt like at that time. Everybody was about attitude at that time growing up that I can remember. That was just so big back then. And so at that time, I feel like wrestling was catering to that audience. It was almost like wrestling changed itself to appeal to that audience. And now, you know, nowadays things are a little bit different. People are a little bit more into their feelings. You know, everything is a little more catered to being for everyone. Everything is about being inclusive nowadays, it seems like. So wrestling, of course, I feel like is following suit and trying to be more inclusive for everyone, kind of like how it used to be. So I feel like it goes around in circles, man. And I think that's also why certain people's interest in it goes around in circles, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I can see where I think my interest is probably the last 4 or 5 years has peaked, and I think reason why after I start looking at it is that independent wrestling has peaked again, and I don't just like being able to watch one show, and technology changes a lot of stuff too. You know, I got the technology of a radio show right here in my bedroom on a laptop. We can watch. I watched New Japan. You know, at 7 o'clock in the morning, and they just got done with the show the other night, and that stuff like that you just couldn't do. Let's. This is one of the questions I like to ask everybody. At what point, the first show I went to, I knew it was not on the best thing, not on the up and up. I knew that because I was live right in front of the, like 5 feet from the ring. But it didn't bother me. I absolutely loved it. And people that grow up now, that become a fan, say, in the last 3 or 4 years, or even maybe 7 or 8, kayfabe's dead to them. They have all the websites, they know everything. But when did you say, okay, I know it's a work, I know something's going on here? At what point did you, and did it bother your fandom? Did you say, oh, I hate it now?
Well, I wonder when that. Let me think. Let me try to think, because it was never like there was this sudden realization or anything like that. I think, honestly, my parents were the first people to tell me that, well, that they're not. I think my mom, my mom was just, my mom is kind of a blunt person, and that's kind of just the way she was. There was no, there wasn't a such thing as, oh, well, I'll let him believe Santa Claus is real to a certain age. So
Mama would go, she wasn't even kayfabing you about Santa Claus, huh?
Yeah, no, she wasn't that kind of person. So, I'm sitting there watching wrestling and me and my friends, we're all excited about it. And I believe, it was her one time when I was a kid, she was just like, well, that stuff is not real, right? That they aren't really hitting each other, or that they, whatever comment that she made. Right. And it was kind of like, and I think even at that time I was kind of like, okay, but I still enjoy it. It was never like I had this moment where I was like, what? It's just a show, and I just sort of quit on it or anything like that. I think in a way I always kind of understood. I think maybe I always kind of knew. You know what I mean? Like sometimes, and UFC was also something that was coming up then, and I'm a big sports fan. I like boxing and stuff like that. So, there's a difference between the way somebody is reacting when they're getting hit by Mike Tyson versus how they're reacting when they're getting hit in a wrestling ring. So obviously,
exactly.
I think that anybody with just the utmost normal of being able to observe things, I think I always kind of felt that it was a show. But it really wasn't about that for me, man. I kind of have the same thing with movies. Like when I go watch a movie, I know that that what I'm looking at is not really happening. I know that The Rock didn't jump out of a burning building. I know that, that Arnold Schwarzenegger isn't really on this highway blowing up Terminators. But still, it's about suspension of belief. It's about if that moment, if their performance can make you feel something in that moment, then it's okay. It was real to me in that moment. It was real to me when, Steve Austin was there face to face with The Undertaker and they're looking at each other and the intensity in both of their eyes, and then they stare at each other and Austin's talking crap, and then all of a sudden they're going to blows with each other. It didn't have to be 100% real for me to believe in that moment that these two characters that I love were about to get it on. So to me, that is the beauty of wrestling. I don't think there ever was a time where I was like, well, because it's a show, I'm not going to watch it. I always kind of appreciated the performance of it all.
Yeah, I mean, I felt the same way. I think, and then when I was smartened up, I guess that's the best way to put it. Someone sent me a kayfabe sheet and everything. I was like in a different world. I was like, okay, so I knew it was a work, or I knew there was something, but now I can see how they do it, and it actually made me, I think, a more avid fan. Okay, we're going to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, I want to talk about your training. And then I took a look at some videos on YouTube. We're going to talk about some of your opponents. We'll be right back after the commercial break, guys.
All right.
Shooting the Shiznit is exclusively sponsored this month by Cloud9 LLC Vapor Company. Cloud9 LLC Vapor Company is your go-to vape shop in Oxford, Mississippi. Located on the West Oxford Loop near Continental Hair Salon. That's right, you can reach them on Facebook at /Cloud9 Vapor Supplies. That's /Cloud9 Vapor Supplies. Or over there on Twitter at Cloud9 Vapor Ox. OX. That's Cloud9 Vapor Ox. OX. Or you can call them at 662-832-6297. Over 300 flavors of juice, and if you need a starter kit, they're the place to go in Oxford, Mississippi. Come in and test all the flavors and tell them that Shooting the Shiznit sent you. All right, we're back. Hey, let's go with when do you decided to be a wrestler, and when you, because I see a lot of videos and I can see that you've been a pro for a long time, and can see that I watched some stuff from 3 or 4 years ago, and then some stuff from recently. You progressed. You could see the progression of your work rate and everything. And your presence in the ring. But when did we start training? Who did you train with, and all of that?
Well, I've been wrestling for about 9 years now. Wow. So, yeah, it's been about that long. And so I want to say that probably 08, 09, right at the end of 08, 09 was about when I first really started training. And it all happened in Amarillo, Texas. There was an independent promotion called Top of Texas Wrestling. And that's really, and that was where I went to my first ever independent show. I had gotten with some friends. I was I was a manager at a movie theater, believe it or not. And I was working with some friends, and they were avid wrestling fans. So, we were meeting up, watching pay-per-views and stuff like that. Every now and then we get on the trampoline and fool around and do some stuff like that, throwing each other, not knowing what the heck we were doing. But somehow we got this invite, and it was on MySpace, if you can remember that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we got an invite to go to this show in Amarillo. And we were like, what, a live wrestling show? Because like I said, over in this town, here in Midland, Odessa, wrestling it wasn't anything, especially independent wrestling, it wasn't anything we saw over here a lot. So we jumped at the chance, and long story short, we were in the crowd. We had a blast. We had such a great time, and we stood out to the promoter that night. So after the show was over, we're getting ready to go home, and the promoter actually meets me and my friends outside, and he's like, hey, some of you guys look pretty good. You guys have pretty good looks. You look athletic. Have you ever thought about giving wrestling a try? And his name was Jack Logan. He still runs Top of Texas Wrestling in Amarillo. And we were like, well, sir, we don't know. I mean, I don't know. Maybe it's a little too late for that. At this point, I was out of college, so I was kind of in my mid-20s. And I was like, I don't know, man. I think that ship might have sailed. I don't know. And he said something to me that I just will never forget. And it kind of became, I guess, what my persona or gimmick is in a way. He said, look, man, you never know until you try. You can't say that you couldn't do it until you tried. Always make sure you try, or you'll always have that regret. Something to that effect. And I was like, you know what? Maybe he's right, man. I love this. This is something that I've watched for such a long time. Let's see if any of that time I spent, all these years I spent watching this, let's see if anything translates to the ring. And sure enough, that night, he let me and my friends get in the ring, and some of the wrestlers came out. We got to meet them firsthand, and they just went through some basic drills with us. Running the ropes.
Wow, yeah.
This all happened this night. And so we were running the ropes and learning how and stuff like that. And I just took to it like a fish to water, man. I mean, I was doing some of the things on the first and second try. And when that night was over, they were like, hey, you need to come back here. I think you were meant to do this. That was kind of what they told me. And they just made such a great impression on me, man, that before I knew it, my friends and I every weekend were driving 4 hours to Amarillo just to train. And that's really where I got my start, was right there in Amarillo, Texas.
Awesome. And that's, you said it's part of your gimmick there with, you're called the Living Proof. Is that where we got it? We started at an older age than most people start professional wrestling, but you just showing people that you can do whatever they can do, huh?
Yes, and that's really what the Living Proof is all about. Now, it didn't start there. I bounced around with a lot of different names. I think I was the Prodigy at one time. One time, I think we did a storyline where I was suspended and was arrested because I trespassed, and then I came back from my time in prison, and then I was in the Nation of Islam, and I joined this other guy that came through, and we were like this Islamic group. I've done a lot of crazy stuff in my 9 years of wrestling, but the Living Proof persona, I think, is really the closest to me that I could possibly be. It's what I think I'm meant to be in wrestling, and all it's about is it's just about a guy that goes out and says, hey, man, whatever your dreams are, whatever your goals are, whatever it is that you're trying to attain in life to be happy, you need to reach for that. You need to strive for that. And it's going to be hard. It's going to be a struggle, but you need to go for it, because everybody out there should try to be living proof of something. So I wanted to embody that ideal, and that's where the Living Proof name comes from.
Yeah, I see. I've seen some older stuff where you was a heel, but you seem so comfortable in the ring with you came out in the Future of Honor with the flag and the whole nine, and there is I guess a swagger that workers get after so long, that when they're in the ring, there's still sometimes a nervousness, but there's that. I could do this. I've done it before. I don't have to ask. And I watched that in some of your later matches. Like I watched a match between. Well, before we get to that match, let's talk about, because I went through the videos on YouTube. Talk about Tough Enough. Right. You actually sent a video in for Tough Enough. Something that I like about you, Justin, is that you can talk. And a lot of people can't. They'll be the best in the ring, but they can't talk. You did a great Tough Enough interview, I thought. But talk about doing that. What was your inspiration? You just thought maybe we're going to do it and try to get on the show?
Yes. So what happened was, and I don't know, I mean, people say I got close to being one of the people selected, but, you know, you hardly ever know with that process.
Right.
But, yeah, like whenever they were doing that Tough Enough casting call and people were to submit like a little 60-second video about why they deserve to be on Tough Enough. And at this point in my wrestling career, I had been in the ring with quite a few names from the WWE. I had wrestled Billy Gunn. I had wrestled Chavo Guerrero, Matt Hardy. So I had wrestled some names of some pretty, not only popular guys, but these are some of the greats when it comes to...
Right. I seen that poster. Yeah, that was really neat the way your poster was. You showed the WWE that you had been in the ring with, and, you know, they look at something like that you have been in the ring with guys like that, and it may ask them, you know, how was this kid? So
exactly, and that's what you hope for. You hope that those experiences not only help you learn and help you grow, but lead to opportunity. So when I cut that video, I was like, look, that's the best thing I can say. That's what'll help me stand out from some of these other competitors. And if it's the first impression that I give WWE, then I want it to be about that. And, you know, you never know how effective those things are going to be. But, man, that video sure caught fire on Facebook and some other things. And it got a ton of shares. It got a ton of views. And the next thing I knew, they put it on their official website. So,
wow.
So for a while, that Tough Enough video that you looked at, it was on their website where you could go to it. And it was like top prospects, and I was actually on that list. So, of course, I didn't get the final call as a contestant. But, yeah, I like to think I got pretty close. They put me on there. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you could always use that if you ever turn heel that you was too tough, you know, to being tough enough or something.
Yep,
like
I was too tough. Yeah. They were afraid to put me on. Yeah, we'll go with that.
I want you to go through the process because we still have a little bit of time, but the main thing is I grabbed you because you was part of the Future of Honor. If I'm right, this is your second match doing for Ring of Honor on Future of Honor.
Yes, sir.
Was with Cheeseburger, which they gave y'all guys a lot of time on that one.
Yes.
A really good match. Cheeseburger is just he has to be easy to work. He really does. He has to,
Oh, yeah. Great guy. Love that guy, man. And he just opened up a dojo in Baltimore, and he's getting a lot of, every time I look at his Facebook, he's got a booking somewhere, man. He's doing great, and just a wonderful attitude, that guy.
And so tell us the process. How do you get on the to be part of the Future of Honor? How do they contact you guys and everything? Just go through that process so our listeners can hear it.
Okay. Well, really, the process for me was there's a saying that a lot of veteran guys will say to younger guys who are trying to get into wrestling or trying to make something in wrestling, and that phrase is "do the drives." And what that means is sometimes that you have to spend a little money. You got to go where there are opportunities and make the best of those opportunities in order to get them. So for me, one of my mentors in wrestling is Bob Evans, Brutal Bob Evans, who's also a Ring of Honor superstar, wrestles in a tag team, the Tough Guys. And I met Bob because he did a seminar in Lubbock, Texas. And really it was kind of one of those just storybook things, man. One thing led to another. It was at a point in my life in my wrestling life, I guess you could say, where I was kind of in a rut, man. I was directionless, and I felt like when it came to the West Texas scene, I had done everything about that there was to do. I had helped run and start a promotion in old school wrestling that was up and running. I had held championships. I had wrestled for a lot of the bigger promotions in Texas, and I just felt stumped, man. I felt like I wasn't progressing, and I felt like I really needed to take the next step. Well, long story short, I met Brutal Bob Evans, man, and Bob was impressed with my work. He saw me up at the seminar, and he was like, hey, man, I'm doing a seminar, and guys from Ring of Honor are going to be there. Danny Cage from the Monster Factory. He was a really popular wrestling trainer. He's going to be there, and some other people are going to be there, but it's going to be in Rhode Island. But it's a week long. It's a camp. I really think you should come to it. And, man, the talk that I had with Bob and his encouragement and what he said to me were things that I just hadn't heard in years, and I needed to hear them. So I packed up, man, and I got on a plane, and I flew to Rhode Island. And sure enough, the Ring of Honor bookers and promoters were there. I wrestled a tryout match in front of them, and they were really impressed with me. And Cheeseburger was there also, and they were just really impressed with me. I got nothing but good feedback, and I told them, hey, man, what do I have to do? What do I have to do to take the next step? I'm willing to fly. I'm willing to travel. I'm willing to do the drives, as wrestlers say. And they said, okay, man, well, how about this? The next time you come through Texas, we'll give you an opportunity. And they kept their word, man. And they came through to San Antonio. And the next thing I know, I get pulled. I was out there helping with the ring and everything. I get pulled into the bag. I meet the guys. Everybody comes up, shakes your hand. It's real nice. I mean, it was just a wonderful environment, that Ring of Honor locker room. And they tell me, you've got a match tonight with Cheeseburger. And that's really how it started, man. And then that match went well. I got good feedback from that. And before I know it, they came a few months ago, and I was wrestling in San Antonio in the Aztec Theater. So it's been wonderful, man. I can't say enough about it.
I like, I've said that I'm originally from the Memphis area, and I always told every time I seen a camp, I was always telling the boys, hey, man, go this camp, do this, do this. But, there's those people that want to be, the big fish in the little pond. And they'll do that for their whole career, and they'll never really do anything but be in that area. I've got to ask first, make sure we put your stuff over where you're on Facebook and everything. But before we go there, I watched a match, and this was a few years back. But I just want to know the story behind how did you get Matt Hardy? Because he worked 30 minutes with you, brother, and that's something that don't happen. What happens is, and you've been in the ring with some big guys, and you've probably been in the dressing room with so-called stars. The star will come in and say, what are we going to do? What you want to do? And most guys are really, are good about it. Will either put you over or do what you want to do, but they're not going to stay 30 minutes in the ring with you. But you had a legit 30-minute match with, by the way, a really good match with Matt Hardy. How did that come about?
Man, Matt Hardy, I'm going to preface this by saying that Matt Hardy is easily one of the best guys I've met in professional wrestling, especially just out of the superstars that I've had the privilege to wrestle against and work with. And Matt Hardy was just such a good guy. So whenever he came in and the match was booked and everything, there was a training session prior to the match. So he got to see what I could kind of do in that training session or whatever. And I'm pretty sure he was kind of sizing me up, but he kind of got to see what I brought to the table. And before that even happened, though, I cut a promo on Matt Hardy. I went to, because he was doing this gimmick where he was like, Matt Hardy is stronger than death. I don't know if you remember that when he was on the Indies. Yeah. So me being the heel that I was at the time, I went to a graveyard. And I was like, look, Matt, nobody in this graveyard has ever been able to escape death. And you're not going to escape either. And I just kind of basically said, when you get to the ring, you're going to step in the ring with death itself. And I kind of cut this promo, and it was a decent promo. I thought it was pretty good. And the funny thing is that he saw that promo, and he went and he produced his own promo. You can actually look it up. And there's a promo of him he's cutting a promo against me, talking about, I saw you out in the graveyard and stuff like that. And ultimately, man, no other superstar I had ever worked had ever done that for me. He put the time in, he went to his studio, and he cut a promo again to answer back to the promo I cut. He was the first superstar to ever do that for me. And I just appreciated that so much. It really brought a local buzz to the match, made it seem more important and everything like that. And so whenever we are, when it's time to have this match, he was kind of like, I'm thinking anywhere from 30 to 40 minutes for this match. Let's just go the time limit. And I was like, are you sure? And he was like, yeah, we'll go the time limit, man. I think you're a good champion. I think you're a good guy. I wanna help you guys grow. And that's what he said, man. So you got to understand what that means. Like to a person
that's
like
awesome.
me.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I said, I looked at that and I was like, but here's the deal. That Matt Hardy could have come in, and it tells guys. That's why I like to hear these inside stories. It could and let my guests tell them, because Matt Hardy could have came in and did a 10-minute match, tag team. You put him over, and that's all we had to do. I mean, really, that's all he'd had to do. But that shows you the kind of character that Matt has, and people that don't. That people that don't let it go to their heads, kind of thing. Matt has, always been one of my favorites. I loved him and I love the new gimmick that he's been doing the last couple of years. But yeah, I just had to ask, how'd you talk Matt Hardy in it? But awesome story, man. It's been a pleasure. But I want you to put over your Facebook, your Twitter, put over your stuff real quick before we get off here.
Sure. So you can find me at Jastin.Taylor on Facebook. And Jastin is kind of hard to miss, Jastin. There aren't too many Jastins on Facebook, so I'm sure just look for the guy with the flag looking crazy in the wrestling gear. And then on Twitter, it's at Jastin Taylor. So again, really easy. And then my Instagram is just the reverse of that. It's Taylor Jastin on Instagram. So please follow me. I'm always doing encouraging and motivational videos and stuff like that, as well as cutting promos for wrestling. I always try to have some fun, too. I review movies, and I'm actually an aspiring screenwriter as well. So there's movie topics and stuff on there all the time on my Facebook. So I'm always having a good time, and I'm always trying to perform in a town near you. So please hit up the living proof, Jastin Taylor.
All right, guys, remember, we'll be here, same bat time, same bat channel, on the best little wrestling podcast in the business. Love my mama. And be there. Thank you.
I'll drink a Dr. Pepper to that.
Hey, that was another great episode of Shooting the Shiznit. I do appreciate you guys joining us. We're always looking for contestants for Who Wants to Be the Best Shizniter Ever. We have shirts, that's right. We have merch.com. And shirts start at $12.99 and sizes all the way up to 6XL. A big thank you to Cloud9 LLC Vapor Club. That's our sponsor for this month. It is the go-to vapor shop in Oxford, Mississippi. Remember, Patreon side. It's our Patreon side. We're trying to get 10 Patreons. That's patreon.com. Shooting the Shiznit without a G. That's right. Bob McGee at Pro Wrestling's Between the Sheets. That's www.pwbts.com. Thank you, Bob. Thank you, Gene Jackson at locals2legends.com. Sean Garmer at Wrestling to Max website. That's w2mnet.com. And our buddies over there at WrestlingNewsCenter.com. All you guys posted, we do appreciate it. You can reach me at Comic Book Mark BT, at Shooting the Shiznit on Instagram. That Comic Book Mark BT is on Twitter. We're on Facebook. We have a Facebook page. We also have a Cool Kids Wrestling and MMA Talk Facebook group. You have to ask to join. We don't like you, we kick you out. All the archives are at www.stspod.club. We're on iTunes. We're on Stitcher, Player FM, Podcast Addict, Spreaker, and all the other fine podcast players. A big shout out to Creative Control. These are our podcast brothers. Yeah, that's right. Creative Control over there. Jojo Feeney, also the Creative Control Network. Keeping it 100 with Conan. We do appreciate all the plugs and the helps there. P3 Radio with my buddy Max. Listen to the Red So Fine episode. That's one of my favorite. And two non-wrestling podcasts that I just love to listen to. It's Who's Right Podcast and Po Boys Podcast. The last couple episodes on Po Boys have been really great episodes. Y'all guys reach out. Try to listen to our podcast brethren, all right? Brethren, whatever you want to call it. If you're still listening. If you're still listening all the way to the end. Thank you. Thank you very much. Now let's get on with the day.